Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, taking another episode of I Just Seem to Collect Things to amuse myself and to make videos on it. That is because today I'm going to be doing the first, what will probably be a video series on the Steam Machine, focusing on the best emulators for Steam Machine and how to get the most out of it. That is because any new gadget I'm always kind of enamored with, because I did a bunch of videos on the Steam Machine before it actually released. We're going to be doing a little bit of a micro unboxing and then getting into some performance and emulation later on in the video. But I'm always excited when Valve releases new hardware because I've had a metric ton of fun with the Steam Deck and still consider it to be one of the best pieces of gaming hardware ever made. And even though I don't need another PC, like I don't need another hole in my head, magically it seemed to make its way to me, so we're going to be taking a look at it today. But first of all, leave me a comment down below and you tell me, did you pick up a Steam Machine and what sort of videos do you want to see on it? Because I'm going to be going over just some top notes of some of the harder to emulate things today, talking about its performance, and then we can kind of get into later on the channel different things like setting up EmuDeck, getting PlayStation 4 emulation running perfectly fine, and everything else like that. Because I will say, this, even though it is definitely more expensive than the components inside of it would lead you to believe, is going to be an absolute emulation powerhouse. Basically anything out there for the most part that you want to emulate, if you put it on a Steam machine, you're going to be perfectly fine. So much so that don't even ask about questions like Dreamcast or Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis. This thing will absolutely chew through that emulation. And really, I love taking a look at new gaming hardware on the channel, and when Steam Machine was announced, I threw my name in that kind of email raffle to see if I could get a pre-order spot for when it did release, and actually I won something, which is really rare because in my real life, I don't win anything whatsoever unless I am playing poker at a casino, and that's less about odds and more about reading a situation. But if you give me 10 chances to flip a coin and win one of them, odds are 10 out of 10 times, I'm just going to straight up lose. So it was definitely fun to get something like this, and I will say, it is a very fun, very condensed box of absolute gaming goodness that did not want to focus on my camera whatsoever. That big sea of black is definitely a fingerprint magnet as well, so try not to touch it too much when you're on camera, or else you are going to get into a situation where you see those fingerprints. But all fingerprints aside, this thing is absolutely a tiny little box of black fun, because black is in these days, it is slimming, and this thing absolutely isn't very large whatsoever. I was actually surprised, even having read the dimensions, just how small it is, and honestly how capable it is for what you're actually getting. Now I totally understand what's going on right now. This should probably be a $750 machine, not something getting into the 4-digit mark, but there's nothing we can really do about that. It is the reality of the current situation, so we're trying to figure out whether or not, if you have something less than this, it would be worth it or not for you to pick up. And as far as it being a quote-unquote console is concerned, it is just a PC in a box, of course, but they're trying to go for that living room setup. You have the two USBs in front as well as the micro SD card. You're able to clean the fan, you have a power button, and obviously you can hook up basically any wireless controller you want to this thing. And its ability to connect via HDMI and control a TV and even turn it on from the controller, 10 out of 10. So this definitely hits the mark for quote-unquote living room PC that really does feel like a console, even more so than actually docking a Steam Deck. Around the back, display port, HDMI, power, Ethernet, a couple more USB ports, and a USB-C, really kind of rounded off. You could probably just pop in a USB-C hard drive versus paying for more storage from Valve, because they are not giving it away. And honestly, I don't think they did this on purpose, but overall this thing is basically like a GameCube with about 30% meat added on to the top. And it is pretty hilarious just how close these things are, and even though I'm not the type of person to buy skins and put them on something like a Steam Machine, if there's not already a GameCube decal, that would be very disappointing. And that leads us into our first kind of test here, and this isn't going to be comprehensive. This is just me throwing things at the wall, pushing them as far as they can go, and seeing if the actual Steam Machine will choke. This is Super Mario Sunburn, not Sunshine, running at 60 frames per second, running in 4K internal running resolution, and it had absolutely no issues whatsoever, running full speed on the machine with no frame drops, no issues in the cadence of the frame pacing whatsoever. And honestly, I wasn't expecting to see that, but it would be a very bad test if that's something that I was able to encounter. And I just basically gave it the version of the game that I wanted to play, dial it up to 4K, and change nothing else whatsoever. So this is out of the box or out of the machine testing, and I understand that sometimes you can enhance games, but I love taking a look at them basically without throwing on too many mods. That way if something goes wrong, I know it's the game and not the mod. and just a moment to talk about modern gaming because of course I do play more recent games, and the most recent game that I actually had installed and available to go because I wanted to give it a decent chance was Wolfenstein: The New Order. And this obviously is not a new game, but it is still something that looks absolutely stunning and will push hardware if you want it to. So I just went ahead and dialed this game up to ultra, ran it on the Steam machine, and it ran at a perfect frame rate, no issues whatsoever again. And I totally get it. I could pick something like Cyberpunk, I could pick something like the newest Doom, but that's just not really what I am as a channel, and you should never expect the Steam machine to hit something like Ultra 4K on any of those games. Honestly, I know Valve advertised this as a 4K box, but really in modern gaming, it's a 1080p box, and if you're lucky, a 1440p box if you bring some of the settings actually down. But for stuff that's on sale and a little bit older, this is running at 4K and I'm not having any issues with it, and it is still an amazing game that usually is pretty cheap on Steam. So don't think that just because you've seen some reviews saying that this is not a very good modern gaming box that you can't have a metric ton of fun with it. Again, I am a retro gaming channel and I love talking about emulation. I did the entire series on Steam Deck, so that's what I'm going to be focusing on. But I do play modern games on these things and I really didn't have any issue. I did capture Doom Eternal as well, but there was something wrong with the capture. It seemed to be wanting to drop frames only on the capture card, so I'm not sure what was going on there. But Doom Eternal with medium settings at 1440p, it was a good time as well. Now again, that's not what we're going to focus on, but I know the question was going to be asked, and yes, Video Game Esoterica does play modern games when they actually entertain me, and I will say Machine Games' remaking of the Wolfenstein franchise and kind of reimagining was one of the best quote-unquote modern games I played in a long time, and I hope they go back to it at some point. But the primary focus of my Steam machine, at least in these videos, is going to be emulation, and soon I will do another tutorial on how to install EmuDeck in a more modern operating system, because obviously the last time I did that tutorial was like 2024, and right now if you do want to put EmuDeck on, you will see that it doesn't really actually recognize the Steam machine, it just sees the Steam Deck, but in my experience there was no issue with that whatsoever. It just configured everything exactly the way it should, and I was able to use emulators any way I would care to. You'll see here Steam Deck or Anbernic. Obviously pick the Steam Deck. I am sure that the EmuDeck team will update that soon, and I'm not sure why the YouTube videos couldn't get the configuration. A little bit messy of a situation right now, but it will work, and this is what I'm going to be going over again in the future. So if there's any particular emulation videos you want to see, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Switch, things like that, you leave me that comment down below, and you'll see here, it'll show you what you can install by default. I just went ahead and selected the defaults to get through this testing quickly, and you can basically just throw on whatever you want, put whatever settings you want on, and really make the Steam machine every bit as good as the Steam Deck for emulation and retro gaming, and even better because they're going to have way more horsepower under the hood to do stuff like PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, and the like, even Nintendo Switch, which honestly doesn't really require that much overhead as far as an actual handheld is concerned, and the Steam Deck's a better Switch than the actual Switches even of itself. But it's going to be really fun to put this thing through its paces, and again asking you what it is you want to see, because I'm probably going to run these maybe as bonus episodes in the evening so that they're out there as tutorials, because honestly some of the deck videos did extremely well for me, and I always love getting more people into emulation and retro. And after people get the Steam machine underneath their TVs or next to them or wherever the hell they're going to put them, maybe in the bathroom, you never know, they're going to want to play more stuff and they're going to go to retro, and we always advocate for that here. So moving over to something like Dolphin, again in 4K, pushing it for everything it's worth. The Steam machine did not chug whatsoever. It didn't even really ramp the fan up. One of the #1 most impressive things is it is absolutely a very silent machine versus something like the Steam Deck docked. When you are emulating heavier games, you're definitely going to hear it ramp up. So if you want that silent kind of emulation experience in your living room, this is definitely going to have you covered. One of the nice things is, compared to building a PC, and yes, I totally understand, you could build a PC right now for the same pricing, get a little bit better spec. You're getting a box that is very quiet, that will run modern stuff as well, and it really just does fit really well into your living room. That's something, at least if you're like me and you have a spouse, you can't just throw a gigantic PC tower next to your TV and hope that that will be cool. You have to have something that blends in. And don't forget, if you're not trying to run AAA games, if you're trying to run modern games that have a retro aesthetic, something like Project Neon here from Full Set, is something I had in my library for testing early on, you will have absolutely no issues whatsoever. But let's move into some more heavy emulation testing just to get an idea of what's going on here. And we're moving into Shad PS4 with Bloodborne. I almost ran the 60p patch to get 60 frames per second, but again, I like seeing what games will do without patches, because if they do struggle, if something does crash or have an issue, it's hard to say whether or not it was the emulation, if it was the Steam Machine performance, or if it was in fact that patch. So I kind of just went and decided not to run the patch for this initial video, but if you want to see that in a future video, do leave me a comment down below. And when it comes to PlayStation 4 emulation, do not think that everything will run as good as Bloodborne. That has nothing to do with the Steam Machine, everything to do with the fact that the emulation developers really do target this game to try to make it every bit as good and well beyond what a PlayStation 4 can do, because weirdly Sony just doesn't seem to want to give us a remaster of this game in the PlayStation 5 generation. That absolutely is a bummer. But as far as running this, I put it at 1920 by 1080. I just figured that would be a good sweet spot to take a look at this, and everything ran full speed, everything looked great, everything was perfectly fine. So as far as the performance here versus on my main editing rig on i9-12900K with a 3080 Ti, I was basically getting comparable performance, because the game of course will only run so fast, and then from there you have to go to mods. Speaking of my editing rig, I actually edited this entire video on the Steam Machine. Just basically plugged my microphone in there and installed Resolve, and even if the render times were about 15 minutes versus 3, which I would normally see on my editing rig, everything worked totally cool, and I can actually use this as a mobile editing platform if I need to. Obviously, that's not why I bought it. I wanted to emulate some fun stuff on it and talk about it in video form, but it's always nice if I could take a game console out and put it to work, because no other game console could ever edit video except the Steam Machine, so that is a fun little plus one. Now moving back over to Dolphin with Super Mario Sunburn, Dolphin emulation is quite mature, and basically anything you're going to throw at this in the Dolphin side of things is just going to work spectacularly. And with all of the different fan mods out there, all of the different texture packs and everything else you can do with what Dolphin is, whether you're on Wii or GameCube, if you want an amazing emulation box that sits next to your TV and runs every single GameCube and Wii game that Dolphin can handle at 4K in a full frame rate, then the Steam Machine so far in my testing has done exactly that. Now again, this is more of an overview review video, so of course if you want to see a particular game tested in the next video, you can leave me a comment down below. But I was blown away that I didn't really have to change any settings or really struggle with anything on the spec on this machine, because of course while it isn't a weak machine, it also isn't the strongest spec whatsoever, and I feel like maybe people were expecting a little bit more out of the actual performance in modern games than AMD actually gave us with that semi-custom part in conjunction with Valve. And while I really would have loved to have seen this bent 800 or even 850 versus the 1050 it costs, it's one of those things when I ask people in emulation videos what they're running, I get two answers and two answers only. Either something cutting edge that probably costs like $6,000 today, or a potato that is growing tentacles off the side and starting to smell a little bit. I would say the most common response of it is going to be an old system. It's like an i5 from the 4th or 5th generation of Intel. So if you are looking for a gaming PC that's going to be a hell of a lot better than if you're running something like that, then this definitely is a really nice wheelhouse. Although I totally get it, if you didn't get in on that pre-order reservation, you're just not going to be able to get one anytime soon. And please do not give the scalpers any money. I've seen these things go for insane prices on eBay. They are not worth that, nor should you reward scalpers for their absolutely garbage bullshit behavior. That is something I cannot stand. And as far as Switch emulation is concerned, everything worked exactly as I would expect as well. You're able to dial the internal rendering resolution of the game up and get better frame rates, get better performance. Really is a better Switch than a Switch, outside of the fact that you can't hold the Steam Machine in two hands and play it like you can the deck. But honestly, it really couldn't chug on anything I threw at it outside of my final test, which is going to be Metal Gear Solid 4 for the PlayStation 3, which does not emulate very well in general, and basically gave me the performance I would expect. But I love testing things even when they don't work well, because it kind of gives me a baseline. I totally get it. I could have picked a game that emulates perfectly on RPCS3, but I wanted to give it a test of something that can just be a little bit jacked up here and there. And this is just basically what I'm finding with the Steam Machine. Outside of the fact that I wish it was like $300 to $400 cheaper, it is doing the things I need it to do when it comes to being an emulation box and just a modern gaming PC for stuff like AAA at medium settings, or games that are 3 or 4 years older at ultra settings. Now of course that's not going to be every game. If you throw Cyberpunk at it, you'll probably still get some chug here and there, but that's not what we're about on the channel. We're not really going to be talking about Cyberpunk anytime soon. Now moving over to Metal Gear Solid 4, this is running on the most recent version of RPCS3, and I ran it in desktop mode just because that's where I installed it and that's what I was doing right now. And there is a slight difference between being in desktop mode and gaming mode. Not that you would actually be able to tell, but I will talk about that in a future video. And this is a game that just doesn't really like to emulate all that well. Even with patches, it can be a little bit of a pain to get into it. And of course, because it's Hideo Kojima, it also takes forever to actually get into the game. The first usable footage outside the test menu was basically just like getting in 9 minutes into the game. But of course, I can't talk about Metal Gear Solid 4 without talking about this absolute insane tentacle scene here. I have absolutely no idea what the hell is going on in this game sometimes, but I absolutely love it. Until we get that remake, this really is still the best way to play it outside real hardware. And PlayStation 3 emulation can definitely still be high test depending on the game you're trying to run, and it is really something I like to take a look at because I like to see how long it takes to compile the shaders and get everything running. So going into the introductory sequence here, just what I'm showing you in this video, you'll see a lot more in a PlayStation 3 specific setup guide video. It is running. Yes, it's still hitching because it's going to compile the shaders, and the Steam Machine is not going to be any better than that than any other system you put on it, because all the shaders are always going to have to compile and cache the first time you run it. And that's why I really like using the first run as kind of an example of what to expect when you turn these things on. I don't want you to think that any emulation is a silver bullet, and the first time you try to run a game it's going to be perfect. For a lot of modern systems with those shader caches, they have to actually perform that cache first until you get to smooth gameplay. But I would say what we're seeing here is very good, and honestly in my testing I didn't throw anything at the Steam Machine that I would say I wouldn't sit down and play as far as emulation is concerned. And these are for the higher test emulators out there: RPCS3, something like Shad PS4, Switch emulation via Eden, and something like Dolphin. And maybe in the next video I'll try to throw the most intense CPU only games that MAME emulates, but I just kind of ran a little bit out of time and wanted to keep this more towards the console sphere because that's what I know people are going to want to play. But as far as my initial impression review of the Steam Machine is concerned, it is a 10 out of 10 $800 PC all day long, and it's like an 8 out of 10 $1,100 PC, which is to say, this thing definitely came in way more expensive than anybody wanted it to, anybody expected it to, but it is still a value for money proposition. And right now, with the absolute insanity and pre-built and custom parts out there, you're just not going to get a better deal than this, even if it doesn't really feel like a deal. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me 1, what videos do you want to see on the Steam Machine, and 2, did you pick one up, and 3, if you did, how do you like it so far? But short of that, we're done. Hope you enjoyed the video, bit of a longer one today, and I'll see you in the future for more Steam Machine tutorials. Bye bye.